Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here, albeit virtually, at the PMI Virtual Africa Conference. And I thought I'd take the opportunity to actually have a little bit of a chat with Otema, who, for those of you who were at the conference last year, I introduced her as the new managing director for the Africa region. So we're going to spend 15, 20 minutes to have a chat with Otema to see what she's learned and what plans are in place for the Africa continent from a PMI perspective. So first of all, welcome, Otema. How are you?
I'm great, Sunil, and I'm happy to be here, although it's virtual. This year's theme of the conference is Africa in the Age of the Project Economy. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I've learned over the last 12 months and the exciting work that we're doing.
There were a lot of plans for PMI, and then on top of that, we've had COVID as well. What have you learned about the region, about the Africa continent from a PMI perspective over the last 12 months?
Well, what I've learned, Sunil, is that we have a tremendous opportunity. Let me give you some interesting stats. There are 500,000 people who consider themselves project managers or who are in the project management discipline. And currently at PMI, we have only 11,000 members. Now, great shout out to those who are in the membership and 11,000 cert holders. And we've got about 9,000 plus members, but there's a huge opportunity there, right? Let me just repeat that. That's 500,000. And we're currently across all our certs, we're at about 11,000 people. So that's the first thing I learned. Amazing growth opportunity. The other thing I learned is that we've got chapters that are passionate, that are really committed and want to embed the profession. And I also learned from the governments that they're really keen to improve their project outcomes with the right set of tools and stuff, because that for them means not just saving money, but it means that the schools get built more effectively, hospitals get up, and then the economy thrives. So those are some of the things that I think we as PMI can really support our practitioners and governments and businesses to do in Africa.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity just sounds amazing. 11,000 to 500,000, project managers. And presumably they're project managers who have the word project management in their title.
Exactly. So, or they're doing work that they see themselves as project managers. And so how do we get them to codify and get training and enablement and get certified in a way so that they know, hey, I've got the global standard for what I know.
And do you think that those individuals would know that of PMI and that our association actually exists? Or is it they're just oblivious to the fact that we are there? I mean, is it an untapped market? Are they registered with other associations, or is it really a greenfield site?
Well, it is a lot of a greenfield. I mean, some people are with other, doing Prince 2, or some people are in the agile space with Scrum, but everyone sees the tremendous opportunity. The thing is, it's the awareness. Now, interestingly enough, people actually know PMP, but they may not know PMI. And so part of this year has been about how do we amplify our brand? How do we get out there? And particularly with our sort of make reality, that is an amazing way in which we can share with that population. And so remember, I said those were the project managers. Now let's think about the change makers, people that are doing things. And that's the next segment. And so then that takes us to over 1 million population that we can. Wow. So I see for us as PMI, it's grow, grow, grow. That's what Africa is about.
I wondered if you could share with us a little bit about the uniqueness of the African continent from an operational perspective, because one of the reasons why we set up this regional model within PMI is that so that we could get closer to the regional needs. So Latin America has specific needs. Asia Pacific has specific needs. And I guess, Africa has specific needs. If we want to reach out to our community and help enable them more, you would have some unique needs, which you probably learned or seen as you've been discussing with your peers within PMI. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So one thing that we've heard, and this was particularly from our Francophone countries, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, et cetera, is that they wanted more content in French to be able, so they saw that as a clear barrier. So what we've done excitingly is that we have formed sort of a French group, which spans across from Morocco all the way down to some, the DRC, because they felt that, they needed to be addressed. A lot of them were taking our certifications and our training in English, but that was a barrier, right? And so they said, if you really want to grow and grow in awareness, we need more content. So now we're doing webinars. And excitingly, this conference is going to be translated in French for the first time. So our colleagues there will get the opportunity to hear the content in a language that is their primary language. So that's an exciting new thing that we hadn't really addressed specifically in the past. Additionally, I think us working with organizations, many of the project managers work in institutions that typically they fund for people to do training. And so reaching into the institution in those learning and development areas and focusing on a B2B, because when you're focused on a B2C, not everyone might have access to a credit card. Not everyone will be able to get access to foreign currency. And those were just impediments, right? But if, for example, you work for a major bank in Africa, and we work with the bank and say, yes, you can get your membership through our bundles and stuff, it gives them an opportunity and access that was previously a challenge, right? So those kinds of nuances we're trying to address.
It's great that you've identified the size of the opportunity, and a lot of our signpost reports were showing, Africa is going to be, over the next 4 or 5 years, a fantastic region for project management specifically, but also for just general economic growth. And then also recognizing the fact that there's the B2C, business to the individual outreach, and then also the B2B, business to business outreach. There are two different approaches of how to get to our community. I think is a great approach. Something that some of the other regions have also really adopted over the last 18 months. This approach via enterprises to reach a bigger audience, amplify our message by getting organizations involved with us to support us as well. So it's good to see that happening in Africa too. The other thing that I think that we noticed in our signpost report was when we do, so by the way, for the audience, a signpost report is a report that we do every year that looks at very large macro trends around the world, and we can use those to really sort of shape our points of view around project management. For example, things like, global warming, how is that going to impact, project management? Things like solar energy, how is that going to impact, the oil industry and therefore projects, etc. And one big one that came out last year that we talked about last year and is now manifesting as well is this proliferation of population in the African region, which lends itself to a very young workforce in the region over the next few years. And I heard you say a few times this comment, there's a youth quake going on in Africa. Lovely term. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that is and help the audience understand a little bit more about the African youth quake?
Yeah, so youth quake is kind of really giving an exciting term to a trend that is really growing. Let me give you a data point here. If you look at the African continent today, there are 1.2 billion people. And of those 1.2 billion people, 60% of them are 25 and under. That is a quake, right? And then another interesting data point is that by 2050, 1/3 of the youth population of the world will be in sub-Saharan Africa. Wow. And so when you take those data points, and these are all from OECD and Brookings Institute, et cetera, that means that Africa has a youth dividend, right? This is the opportunity and the moment where we can build capability and capacity to transform things. And so what we like to do is to start to build that capability. at this conference, our new head of youth, Anya, is going to open up that youth section, right? She's going to, so stay tuned to that. I think that's going to be an exciting, our Future 50, 3 of our Future 50 from Africa are going to also be talking about their journey. We've got entrepreneurs, we've got people in telecom. Don't want to steal their thunder, but it's going to be an exciting time. And lastly, we've got a youth competition because we want to hear, what are your ideas? And you'll hear from some really bright youth, and we're going to adjudicate and say, what was that best idea that leveraged project skills and capabilities to address an Africa-specific problem? So for the first time at the conference, we have a youth track because we believe that if we've got a youth dividend, we've got to begin to nurture them and begin to grow their capability so that they can go out there and make a massive impact in Africa.
That's fantastic. Actually, you're leading from the front here. And what is it with the African continent since I joined? It is coming up with amazing, very attractive terms like, one team, one song, one dance. That started last year, has been adopted by the whole of the PMI community worldwide as our message. We now shortened it to, one PMI, but in essence, it is one team, one song, one dance. That happened in Tanzania last year, and now another term, the youth quake. Mm-hmm. I can see this, catching on, starting in Africa, and then of course because it's the area with the region with the biggest opportunity with youth, but also you see in India, also you see in Latin America, large youth populations. We signed a great strategic relationship with an organization called Claudia in Latin America, which is really targeting business schools and integrating project management into those schools. And again, great opportunity for Africa, to pick up on things that are being done in other countries, in other regions as well, and transporting them to your own region and vice versa, sharing with others. So that collaboration is really now starting to work in our regional model. But of course, super exciting times when you look at the size of the existing market of project managers and change managers, and then you look at the growth of youth over the next 20, 25 years. I mean, it's a massive opportunity, something that we cannot ignore. We have to be all over this one. And I'm really glad, Otema, that you've got a fantastic plan to make that happen over the course of the next few years, which is great. The only thing is, every now and then, things can happen that can, really cause you to rethink your plan and rethink your approach. And of course, this year it's been, the advent of COVID, which kind of like hit the Africa region a little bit later than perhaps, the other parts of the world. But of course, that was an opportunity to learn from other parts of the world how best to approach COVID. How have you seen your work change and the work change for your team in supporting our African, colleagues as a result of COVID-19?
Yeah, so it did hit the continent, in different ways. So you certainly have, in South Africa, whose numbers are rising, and they've had quite an impact there. And then you have other markets where maybe not less so, but everyone has had to pivot to the virtual. And in that pivot to the virtual, they've really had to think about, well, what's the value that we as PMI and PMI chapters deliver to the continent? And one of the things they still wanted very much was to have access to information and knowledge to be able to do their work in this new ways of working. And we shared that. So we came up with this Elimu series, which means learn in Swahili. And to do both to give inspiration during this time, but also to learn about project management. We had the team from Brightline come and present around organizational transformation. We had Anya talk about her trip, her expedition to give that motivation. So what we've done is we've pivoted virtually, but tried to give some structure to it to say, we want to still give you the tools, and we also want to give you some inspiration as you're home. So that's how we've changed. And we've also learned to leverage our ATPs, which is our new authorized training program, those who may not know. And they wanted, we said, hey, you're in country. We're not able to fly. We're not able to go there. You're in country. support us in helping our clients. And that's been an evolving thing. And we're really beginning to see some dynamic relationships being formed. And they're becoming hunters for us because we can't travel. And we're seeing that there's a great opportunity to partner and also look at, so partnering, but also looking at our chapters as an extension of our team. Many of you who are listening in probably know about our PMP initiative, which we drove with the chapters, right? So they set up these boot camps to help prep people, but it was all virtual. And we would support with the content, etc. Then it would move on to YouTube where people could, review it. We even shot a video because people said, it's quite difficult to fill out the application, right, to become a project manager, do the PMP. So we shot a video for them, step by step, screenshot by screenshot, giving them so that they wouldn't have to have back and forth with customer care, right? So those are some of the things. And of course, the plethora of free digital tools and assets that PMI was giving helped to support the region during this time.
I think the other thing that I was really impressed with is your relationship that you built very quickly with a couple of organizations. Dangote was one of them, right? Mm-hmm. And then also the relationship that you built with Tony Elumelu and his foundation. Mm-hmm. So that looks really exciting. I know that, I was on one of those sessions there. Do you want to share what that is with everybody? I think that's a super initiative that you're running there.
Sure. Thanks, Sunil. So the Tony Elumelu Foundation and PMI signed an MOU. And the basis of that is, as many of you may know, they really have a very ambitious position to put many entrepreneurs into the African continent, right? So we thought, well, how can we support that? We can support it through skilling. So we are doing master classes. We have 6 master classes that walk through project management. So we look at areas of risk and strategy and portfolio management, and also agility in terms of our DA offerings, et cetera. And that allows people to then get into a pipeline of whether they can want to take some of our further learning with the support of ATPs, as well as go towards certification. So really about learning, enablement, and certification through that program. And what we found that we can also offer to Tony Elumelu is our mentors through our volunteers, right? So I know many of you have started, we started reaching out to people who can then coach these young entrepreneurs along their journey so that they can have successful project outcomes. Because after all, your business is your project, right? And I think it was an interesting connection, right? Because they were like, oh, I'm not a project manager, but actually you are, because you're running your own business. That's a project. And so we have seen some staggering numbers. On average, about 5,000 people have been viewing each one of the sessions, and we've had 3 to date. So it's really taken off, and the foundation is keen to replicate the program again. So we're excited.
It's available for any country in Africa. It's not like it's just one.
No, it's available to everyone.
That's fantastic. And where do you see this going after the 6 sessions that you've done? And I know that we're sort of guiding people towards the introduction for project management. But after that, how do you see the relationship developing with Tony Elumelu?
So after that, we think that we would continue to offer these types of master classes into the future. And we also will continue to offer mentoring and coaching to those entrepreneurs. So it gives our volunteers an opportunity, whether they're in Africa or outside, to really be part of this youth quake, to kind of impart their skills and knowledge. Because one of the power skills, I know you talk about power skills, one of the power skills is to be a mentor or be mentorable, because it's a two-way relationship.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of value from that. So that's what we see. And they're also engaging. Their president, Ifenua, she's doing a podcast with us on the center stage, sharing. So I think one of the things, too, is that we're also bringing Africa to the world, right? That's one of the things that we're doing.
And there's so much vibrancy, and so much intellect and so much passion out of the Africa, team that we could do with some of that right now around the world. So it's great. It's great that you're bringing that together. Talking about power skills and technology, I was in a discussion with some people just the other day about, technology is really transforming the way work is done there, and that's for sure. But I was saying that at the end of the day, I'd love to get your perspective on this, because at the end of the day, technology is just an enabler, and it's the human skills that really make the difference, right? And that's why I talk a lot about power skills. I'll give you an example. Technology in the wrong hands, right, can cause chaos, cybersecurity, fraud, people faking exams, all sorts of stuff like this that can happen if your values are not right as a human, if your skills and your purpose is not right. And I think that's why you can have fantastic, tools. You can have AI tools. You can have, fantastic WebEx and whatever. But at the end of the day, if the values are not right, then it's very difficult to make the transformation in a meaningful way. And that's the balance between purposefulness and implication as well. I'd love to get your perspective on that. So whilst technology is important, the importance of power skills that complement those. What's your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with you, Sunil. I mean, if you think about some of the power skills, and I can speak to power skills I identify with, right? I think that I'm a collaborative leader. It's one of my power skills. I think one of the other areas, having a world digital and innovative mindset. So I think that the power skills kind of provide you the compass, right, to leverage those tools. So if your power skills are around mentoring and being mentorable, you're going to leverage those that particular power skill and maybe use the technology of Zoom, of WhatsApp to connect and stay connected with your environment. But I think what we should do is to have those power skills be in the front footing, that they drive the technology. It's not the other way around. So that's my point of view.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, a while ago, I did this discussion with Trevor Noah, and I asked him the question, what is your power skill? And you know what? I mean, he's got several power skills, right? I mean, everybody has a unique set of power skills. This is what I'm learning. So yes, there are some key ones like collaborative leadership and empathy, etc., that we should all have. But what makes somebody a little bit more effective is not their proficiency of using a particular tool. It's their power skill. In the case of Trevor Noah, it was his humor. His humor is a super power skill. His ability to think clearly about a particular issue and make it funny, but at the same time be poignant and make a point is a super power skill. He grips the audience, right? And he can make things happen. Having critical thought is another power skill. Sometimes people might say, "Oh, he's really in the weeds," but if it's your power, that could be your strength. It can also be a weakness. In my case, when I was growing up, and in the early part of my career, I was a finance guy, a very strong finance guy, qualified accountant, working in the finance department. But people used to come to me and say, "Sunil, you're super creative," which is the opposite of typical finance, where you're actually doing things in a formalized way. They found me very creative. And so in my finance career, it was a detriment to be too creative. But in a sales role or a market-facing role or a relationship role, it was super powerful to have that creativity, to be able to problem solve, with empathy and with sincerity with your audience. So I think people have different power skills. As I get more and more into what are power skills, I don't think there's a prescriptive set of power skills. I think there are some essentials like empathy, like leadership, etc. But there are others like you mentioned there, mentor and be mentorable, critical skills, humor, sense of fairness, ability to be confident in speaking, get your points across, clarity. So I think there's lots and lots of power skills. And I think I'm looking forward to, because I think a lot of those power skills will emerge out of our youth. And so another part of the youth quake, I think, has got to be, what is the mindset of the youth? And I think we can learn a lot from the African continent as we build our youth program, the Youth Quake. and we will be able to sense and respond to how youth perceive the world today, how they operate, how they use technology with their eyes closed, pretty much, because they're just so born into it.
Exactly.
So it is their power skills that make them individual. Otherwise, we will all just be like robotics, right? And nobody wants that. So I'd love to get your opinion on where do you see project management going? So yes, the opportunity is there. Yes, we've got to land it in the African region. We have the PMP. We are moving into some other areas, agile. We're moving into some, expanding our product portfolio. How do you see the African continent contributing to our thought process as we develop our products into the future?
Yeah, I think that it will be an amazing ground to test our muscle on enablement, right? Because I think we have always focused on sort of maybe an end state, which is a certification or a learning journey. But I think with the youth, they want something now, and there's a pressure, right? You see the staggering statistics of how many people are coming out of education, and they have done that formal process, and then they're not employable, right? So what I think for PMI, Africa offers us to be able to drive our muscle around enablement. How do I actually build capability beyond the classic skills that, so I'm an engineer. So I'm an engineer and I graduate from a particular university, and I'm currently unemployed because of the economy in which I live, right? But if I am enabled to leverage that engineering thinking and capability, and I'm enabled around maybe project skills and stuff, I can either create my own paradigm, or I can then become a really strong engineer that can look at different maybe sectors. So what I see is that the African continent really gives PMI, but also itself, because it's real time, it's now. The youth want a response now, right? They want to be able to work. I was talking to one young man that I mentor. He's in PMI Nigeria, and you won't believe. I mean, he's originally an engineer and stuff, but he's moved into hospitality because he recognizes that there's greater opportunity for him. And so now he already has like 3 small hotels. He's doing touring. And then he said to us, me in one of our coaching sessions recently, because of COVID, he said, well, I'm not filling my small hotels. What do I do? And I said, well, what would you do? And he's like, I've just created this app, and I'm going to get people to look at this part of Nigeria. And then, so what he was doing, cleverly using technology to build his pipeline for future visits, right, to his facility, and booking it. So I think that there's a lot of innovation that's coming from the continent, but I think there's a need to do it a little bit differently. And that difference, I think, is going to be around the speed and the opportunity to focus on enablement.
Great. Hey, so if I was to summarize, fantastic 12 months. You really have, come to grips with some of the challenges. You've had thrown new challenges on top of that. COVID-19 has been the biggest one, of course, that hit everybody. But it's great, and the opportunities are there. I think that, as leaders, we have to be realistic, but at the same time, we have to be optimistic. So, I think that the realism comes from you have to know what are we facing today. And I think over the last 12 months, you've really seen that there's a great opportunity, but there's some challenges as well. It's a big, continent. People underestimate the size of Africa. There are multiple languages, multiple countries. And we're just, one way of executing projects. There are other organizations also involved, like you mentioned, Prince and Agile and whatnot, that are there as well. So we can do our bit and slowly build upon that growth. I'd love for you to, if you feel you have the time, if you want, you can ask me a couple of questions as well, if there's anything that you feel that you'd like to know more about what I can do to help you to build our African presence.
Sure. So yes, I think that's a great leading question, Sunil. So what can you do from your vantage point as the CEO of PMI to help us grow our footprint and also the awareness of us in the African continent?
So at a very senior level, one of the great opportunities I get is I get to see what everybody's doing around the globe. And I can really sort of cherry pick the things which are working well, and I can learn from the things that are not working well. And not everything works to your expectation. So what we're trying in Europe may be very different to what we're trying in Latin America, but there may be something that we can learn from that we can share with each other. So that being the person that can help collaborate and create learnings from what's been going on in other parts of the organization is a great role which I like to play. I think also a challenge we get is you have to be real. We can't do everything. So at the end of the day, we have to be really careful how we choose the areas that are going to have the biggest impact for us. And that then relies on, well, what is the impact that we're trying to achieve? And I want to reinforce our major desire, if you like, our ambition is to enable our project management community to stay relevant at times of change, at times of non-change, just to stay relevant whenever they're around. So if we are doing something that is going to enable our members, or perhaps even introduce new communities to our approach and what we're doing and our services and our standards and our something, then that's a priority for me, because we're trying to enable people. And so that's something that I think that the African continent and your team can look forward to, that you'll always see that if you are doing an outreach beyond your traditional sort of areas of communication, if you're hunting in a new space, then you're going to see that's going to attract my attention, and I'd be very interested in pushing in those directions to get our voice amplified further. So that's very important for me. The other thing is, I recognize it's a huge continent, and notwithstanding what's happened in COVID, and I'm sure we will overcome that, a time has to come when we have to invest more in the region and scale in the region as an entity. You can't, with your small team, cover the continent the way you're doing. It's impossible. You'll burn out. If that demand that you just highlighted at the beginning starts to materialize, we will have to scale our team in Africa. So we will do that for sure. So that's on my radar. And who knows, we might even have an African headquarters soon. And we'll scale from there. By the way, if we do, I wouldn't mind it being in Mombasa. just out of personal favoritism there, but who knows? We might do that. So I think that's the other thing. And then the third thing is getting involved. I think that it's a very special community, the African PMI community, and being closer to that community is super important to me. So whilst you might be there looking after that region, it's very, very important for me to build my own relationships with the regions as well, so they feel that I'm just as approachable. And if they do have challenges, then they have a voice they can speak to in me as well. So I think lending that support is important. So I think there are three things that I would say is what you can look forward to. It's been great chatting to you, and thanks for the question. I think you're doing a grand job, and I hope that you all found that interesting. And we look forward to 2021, where we can hopefully pick up where we left off really in 2019 before COVID hit us, and look forward to that growth, Otema. Well done, and thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sunil. Really appreciate it, and I enjoyed the time.